The following program is produced by the AM First Radio Network and distributed by Global American Broadcasting, the GAB Radio Network.
Thank you for tuning in for this edition of Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali. I am Attorney Zulu Ali with the Justice Watch crew, Rosa Nunez, Michael Bilal Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Andrea Rodeman. This week, like every week, we'll be discussing critical legal and social justice issues that are impacting our communities. This week, we'll be talking about the issue of or continuing issue of longer and harsher penalties for African Americans in general and African American men specifically. And, looking at these numbers, and we've talked, quite a bit in the past, and we continually talk on the issue of the fact that you have African American men who are actually, when you compare African American men and actually African American women to their white counterparts, you'll see that African Americans are giving significant more prison time, anywhere from 10, the numbers are 10 to 20 times more in many instances. And, I am always, I guess, for the lack of a better term, always concerned about those issues and concerned about why that's going on and how do we turn the corner on that, and if we're going to turn the corner on that. I know that a lot of individuals, as we continue to see those numbers increase, although we do see, other positive numbers that we see where you have more people involved in the criminal justice system. More African Americans involved in the criminal justice system. We have more black judges. We have more black police officers. We have more black people in general and district attorneys across the board. However, in light of the fact that you're seeing increase in numbers of black people being involved in the criminal justice system, the numbers basically stay the same when we're talking about the comparison between African Americans and non-African Americans, specifically white Americans. And why, I guess the first thing we'll discuss is why does that happen? And number two, we'll discuss what we really need to do about it. And typically, like I always do, I generally have a different take on the whole issue of, things as it relates to why individuals are doing certain things to African Americans, and what do we really need to do to deal with it. And I guess I'll be, talking talking about our business, right, in the street as it comes to African Americans and how I feel about certain things. But I guess if we begin with the issue of why, why is it that the numbers are that way? You'll have individuals that it goes from everything from poverty to the focus of the justice system to many different things. But the one thing, when you talk about those different variables that impact the numbers that people get, you really can't come to any what I would consider to be a rational reason why black people are more likely to get more time than their white counterparts. There could be this argument, as many people are going to give the argument, that you're seeing more black people committing more criminal offenses. Or it could be the focus of the criminal justice system, or poverty or whatever. But the question, and that goes to at least the answer or proposed, I guess, answer as to why you end up in the system. But then the question is, why is it that if you have two people charged with the exact same offense, why is one person going to get more time than the other person? When you have the majority of the time in most of these cases are settled by some sort of plea bargain. In other words, most cases, regardless of what jurisdiction you're talking about, they enter some sort of plea agreement. That's where we go back to the issue where we talk about the district attorney's office and the counter offers that are given by the district attorney's office when it comes to the offers that they make to African Americans. You know, we have this problem in our country when it comes to dealing with district attorneys, where you're starting to see district attorneys, they always are going to offer African Americans more time than they are their white counterparts. Is, you know, that's kind of how they, because it's all subjective. There is no real formula or system as to how you're offering time. And because you're dealing with, you know, many of the district attorneys who are biased themselves, they're going to make their offers and also see the severity of the crimes based upon their own biases. So when we talk about police officers as they're dealing with their daily jobs, we always, for years, we've been talking about sensitivity training and trying to deal with police officers in a way that they deal with people on the street when they're enforcing the law. But one of the things that we very seldom see and very seldom deal with when it comes to the district attorney's office is they need to go through the same situation. You know, and that means going through some sort of training, because there's severe bias in the district attorney's offices across the country when it comes to dealing with African Americans. And the agreed, because basically, usually the way the plea bargain system comes about is typically a person is overcharged. In other words, let's just say an individual is charged with assault with a deadly weapon, and let's just say they also got a domestic violence charge, right? And let's just say the DA says, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer you the domestic violence charge, and the midterm of that charge is 3 years. That's what I'm going to offer you in this particular case. And so the offer is always measured against the exposure. So let's just say the assault with a deadly weapon, and I'm just using numbers. Let's just say, you know, you can get 6 years for that, and let's just say you can get 4 years for domestic violence, felony domestic violence. Just say your exposure is technically 10 years. And instead of you doing, you know, taking the chance of getting 10 years, then you say, okay, I'll just go ahead and take 3 and do a percentage of the 3 years, because that's what the DA is offering you. They don't want to offer you anything less than that, or they don't want to offer you probation. And it's always there's always, I don't know whether it's overt, covert, or unintentional as to the reason why they're always offering black people more time for the same offenses that other people get. The fact of the matter is that it happens. And they don't I mean, whether there either is a conscious effort to make sure that African Americans get more time than other people, or whether it's subconscious, but it tends to always happen. And when you go into the conversation, when you're speaking with a district attorney about trying to negotiate the time, then there's always this long drawn out discussion about how egregious the conduct is. Well, all conduct is probably going to be, at least otherwise there is going to be conduct, but it's always going to be, framed in a way in which is so egregious as it relates to African Americans. And that black people are always going to be offered more time you're not talking about like a close number. We're talking about a huge number between the time that is offered to black people and the time that is offered to white people. Whether it's something that comes down from their superiors, where this is what they are trying to do, or whether it comes, from, some other reason. There tends to always be this issue of them always offering African Americans, more time. Now, one of the things that you may tend to look at is trying to feel whether you have what we try to do is diversify the district attorney's office. Diversification has come through whether you're trying to get more black district attorneys, more minority district attorneys, or more women district attorneys. I can tell you from my own experience that gender and getting other minorities in the district attorney's office helps black people, don't help them at all. The fact that you're dealing with someone who alleges to be a minority, whether it's a woman or someone who may be from another group, generally helps black people, don't help them, period. And oftentimes they're more harsh, right? You know, it has not been my experience, and I would say that if you talk to the average person that deals with the system, that because someone's gender, whether they're a woman, you may get more time if you're dealing with someone who is also considers themselves to be a minority. It helps. It doesn't help at all. In fact, sometimes they can be more, again, like I said, more harsher. Why that is, I have no idea. Why are people trying to make up for their inferiority?
Idea for a radio show but have no idea where to start? Or have you been hosting a podcast for a while and want to take it to the next level? If so, you need the Gab Radio Network. To host a show on the Gab Radio Network, all you need is your voice, and we'll handle the rest. From technical engineering to full-service audio production and much more. Every show on the Gab Radio Network can be heard on our station on the TuneIn Radio app. Plus, we put all of our shows on our satellite, which is accessed by over 5,500 stations. And here's the best part. You can host from anywhere you want. There are many means to connect to the Gab Radio Network remotely, and our staff of highly trained engineers and producers will make you sound like you're right here in studio. So, if you want to be on the Gab Radio Network, the same network that hosts the Small Business Advocate, Radio MD, and the Federalist, send an email right now to sales@gabradionetwork.com. That's sales@gabradionetwork.com.
Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer, while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands, serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Thank you for tuning in. Welcome back to Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew, where we're continuing with our discussion on the issue about longer and harsher prison sentences. So let's just go back and let's look at the numbers. There's approximately 30,000 district attorneys in the U.S. 54.4% of them are women, and 46.6% of them are men. when we break them up into race, there's approximately 79.8% are white, 6.9% are Latino or Hispanic, 5.8 are Asian, and 5.4 are black. Right? So now you're looking at the demographics. I would say that the majority of, if you look at the numbers, we would say that the majority of district attorneys are probably white women.
Yep.
And so when you look at that number, yet and still, even now we're living in a society where we're seeing an increase in the number of men, or African American men and women, getting longer and harsher prison sentences, and we're looking at a significant increase in the numbers. I mean, you have to ask yourself this question: why is that? What is it about minorities and people? Why would you see those numbers? There has to be some sort of correlation as to the increase of white women being district attorneys, but you're seeing an increase of black men going to prison. The longer and harsher sentences.
Yeah.
Why is that? There are those who would make the argument that white female district attorneys are much more difficult to deal with than white male district attorneys.
I mean, I can see that happening because of the fear. But I mean, this always been. I mean, there's been a question I know for years, because we've talked about it for years, on this subject. And I think we always boil down to the fact that we bring it back to racism. We bring it back to how once someone is convicted, they're convicted in terms of countless laws that can be applied to one individual, where opposed to, let's say, for instance, an individual get caught with a gun.
Mm-hmm.
He would get caught with that gun. He would get that gun charge. He would get an enhancement charge. He would get some type of gang charge. By the time they throw all of these different charges on this individual, he done stacked up to 154 years to life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a hypothetical situation. But when it comes down to that, we see that the numbers speak for themselves, of course. But I think that it all boils down to the bias, like you say, bias and racism. And I think a lot of the times when you look at those statistics in terms of 79% or white, I mean, we can't expect people to not have those biases, because they do, because like you say, the statistics speak for themselves.
I mean, yeah, and I think that, and so what we're understanding, because ultimately, it goes back to the issue of, it's not hatred, it's fear.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always been this issue as it relates to the criminal justice system, and any disparaging issue as it relates to African Americans in almost in any type of institution, it boils down to the issue of fear. Not because, you're going out of your way to try to exclude certain people, and are you trying to exclude certain people because there is a legitimate reason for doing that? In other words, whether you're saying that they can't do the job, or they are more susceptible to committing criminal offenses. I think that those are untrue statements. But I can tell you that being, working in the system every day, I can tell you that there is, you're dealing with human beings who are giving the authority. And when you're giving these human beings the authority over people's lives, generally a large number of these individuals, just like there's police officers, have no business in that business, because they are not there because they are the most qualified. People aren't in the district attorney's office because they're the most qualified. People are not sitting on a bench because they're the most qualified. They're sitting there because of politics and because of an agenda that needs to be achieved. And once you get into that system, and you're either going to serve one or two purposes. Either you're going to be one of the individuals that's going to consciously assist and move the system in a way in which is destroying more people than the criminals are destroying, or you are going to just go along with the system because you just really are just a sorry person, and you're not going to stand up against a system that clearly, is unfair to certain people. If you are a district attorney, or you're a judge, or a police officer, anybody within the system, if you're a public defender, and you know that black people are getting 10 times to 20 times more time than the white counterparts, would you would address the issue with the same intensity that you do when you're trying to prevent or protect these so-called victims in the street? Why is that? Why are you why would you not be? Because then that means that your passion and your desire to have this a just and fair world, a just and fair society, is fake. Mm-hmm. You're not there for that reason. You're there for a job.
Correct.
And you have an agenda. If you're not trying, so why are we looking to create task force or create an agenda to try to prosecute more people who are committing certain crimes? And the reason why you're doing that is supposedly for the protection of the public. But one of the most severe and one of the biggest perpetuators of crimes and unjustness happens to be the individuals who are in the system, who are giving. If you give a man more time for a crime than you do someone else, then that's illegal. I mean, that's not just and fairness. That there's nothing just about that. So what would put that person in a mental state of believing that they are in a system and that they are on a moral higher ground? You're not on a moral higher ground when you're trying to give people more time, a specific individual more time, than you are their white counterparts. How is that just? That's not just at all. That's not fairness.
But they're not looking at it from the perspective of being fair. They're not looking at it from the perspective of them harming anyone. They look at it from the perspective that they have to ingrain themselves in this big machine that keeps going around, where they striving for their political aspirations, where they want to become something greater. So no matter how many people that they can arrest or how many convictions that they get up under their belt, it draws them a little bit closer up that ladder, and it brings a little bit more funds into their pocket to support their family. They can care less about whether or not it's just or not.
No, I mean, and it's the numbers speak for themselves. If you say numbers don't lie, well, numbers don't lie. And who are the people? If you look at the numbers, we know who these. It's all about the prosecutors, and those are the reason when we're talking about these aren't people that generally are going to trial and getting convicted and sentenced. I mean, you do have there's a disparagement when it comes to judges too, when it comes to things that lead up to it. Where you have judges that are mistreating individuals as well and not being really fair when they're imposing sentencing on individuals or dismissing cases or doing those sort of things. We're gonna go through the. You want to go through the break? Huh?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So anyway, and so now that you have judges who are actually playing the same game, and so how do we deal with that? I mean, now that you know that these people are not just. I mean, you know that gender plays no role, because although these people, this is the thing that's interesting about the issue of affirmative action and the civil rights movement and those sort of things that we've been involved in as African Americans. During the civil rights movement, the number of African Americans who lost their life or who were beat and mistreated physically and tortured and traumatized mentally, those were primarily black people that were going through this movement that led up to the Civil Rights Acts to the point where the people who are progressed, primarily women, have progressed more. White women have benefited more from the civil rights movement than black people. Obviously, if you look at it statistically, they have actually moved into certain positions. But although they've moved into certain positions, then the question is going to be, why don't they, as minorities, are the ones who feel like that especially Me Too, right? Why aren't they advocating more for groups of individuals who are being mistreated? That's my question. And we as black people, we always get on this bandwagon to help people who are not willing to help us.
Exactly.
And they're not even going to look back or even care about us. In fact, they would be, I mean, there's no difference between the two. You have, if you're talking about and being honest, I mean, there's a lot of white males who are probably going to be more sympathetic about what's happening in the black community as much as it is a white female. Now, is this a white female bashing show? No, that's not my point. My point is that we have to be clear that when it comes to our agenda, as far as trying to progress as a people, we have to understand that just because someone considers themselves a minority does not mean that they're going to ride with you.
Correct.
You see what I'm saying? They're going to be very selfish, and obviously very selfish when it comes to that, because now you see the numbers of minorities going up, but like I said, I mean, you don't see any progression. You see what I'm saying? I mean, you don't see any progression. We're going backwards. If the numbers are going up when it comes to the incarceration rate, the number, the sentencing, the being stopped, all these things are increasing. Not to mention that you've seen this significant number of this significant increase when it comes to the private prison industry. I mean, it's an industry nowadays.
Yeah, and like you say, it's that big old machine, and everybody is profiting from it. And I just just to kind of give an analogy, I saw something just recently where, and it's not off the subject, but just to kind of bring things into this fold. I saw something not too long ago where there was a bill that was coming out that the FDA was pushing about stopping herbal supplements from individuals because they couldn't patent it and it was healing people. Basically, the way I look at that is that they're stopping that because it takes money out of their pocket because people are healing themselves. And I look at the same way when it comes to this big prison complex, where it's this big old thing that we have to make sure that we keep this prison population going. We have to keep this big cycle. So we're not going to do anything that's going to be beneficial for these individuals. So we're not going to look at it from a perspective that we're trying to do something that's right, that's trying to help someone. We're going to look at it from the perspective is that I have to do by whatever means in order to keep this prison population full and keep this big old monster going around in a circle so we can keep this money going and these politicians being fed with this same money. And so the politicians not going to jump on that bandwagon and try to correct these ills because it'll be taking money out of their pocket. So it's up to people like us to actually give voice to this. Because no one else is gonna voice it because they benefit from it.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like I mean, it's sad because that is really that. I mean, clearly there's we can chew gum and walk and chew gum at the same time. Being that there are other issues that we have to do what we need to do to stay out as much as we can to stay out of the system. But at the same time, we have to understand that they are both equal problems. One is not. I mean, when we talk about the issue about what the victimization that goes along in the street, this is the thing that is troublesome. Is that these people may not have the ability to understand their immorality. I mean, you have to look at it this way. And this is kind of like you have to keep that in perspective, because from my perspective, and at least from my perspective, I'm always taken aback by the inability for someone to have it's not what you think is wrong, but you know, this whole idea of looking at another individual or looking at society in general and having a moral compass that allows you to be fair and impartial and treat people equal, right, and just, because that's your moral compass. It's just in you. It's just there's certain things, you know, you're just that way. The same type of morality that would keep me from imposing harm on someone else that is not imposing harm on me would be the same type of moral compass that would make me or prevent me from giving someone an unjust sentence. And so, because it's not as much of it is much racism. I guess we can use a word, which I don't like using a word, but it's because they don't have that. They can't conceive it. They don't even understand what they're doing. Just like when you have someone who is a monster, who's just killing people in a way that's unjust. They just happen to be wearing a suit, and they just happen to have an education. And the only difference between the guy that goes out and kills or maims someone or does something that allows them to get 15 to 20 years in prison, that person's moral compass is equal to a prosecutor or a judge who would give someone 15 or 20 years unjustly.
Correct.
They're the same human being. And that's what makes, so when you're talking to that, when you're having a conversation about trying to, you know, negotiate sentencing, it's very difficult because you have to realize that you're talking to someone who doesn't have that moral compass. They happen to they were raised in a middle class to an upper middle class neighborhood. They went to a nice school. They had good grades, and they come across as someone who is a traditional, stereotypical, law-abiding citizen, but they're not. They're not typical law-abiding citizens, and they don't understand that the same guy that I'm defending, who is in jail for having a fight with his girlfriend, is the same. You're the same person. You're talking about the egregious conduct.
Yeah.
But you're not talking. But you're unable to see that what you're doing is the same thing that this person is doing. You're morally equal. They can't see it. They cannot. They cannot conceive their immorality. For example, just think about this, and you have to think about this situation when you think about the prison. I mean, when you think about how this country came into existence. The thing that is difficult for me to understand is how these people, now you're not talking about some people, you're talking about people who had basically the same temperament that many people have today, that actually chained, shackled, beat, killed, raped, and stole from people for centuries. Right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing that anyone that's in prison for raping and killing and stealing and human trafficking that our early founders, so-called founders and colonists, didn't do themselves.
Yep.
So how do you reconcile knowing that now that mindset and that heart and morality, it just didn't go away. It wasn't like, okay, here's the Emancipation Proclamation, and so I'm going to sign this, and now all of a sudden, mysteriously, all of these individuals that were evil human beings goes away. Those people still exist. They exist in this country. They are here. And they are oftentimes sitting on benches. They're district attorneys. They're police officers. They're corrections officers. They're all over the place. There's, when you look at the percentages of now, if you're wanting to talk about someone, if I could be a completely diabolical person and I'm going to be a stereotypical person, then I can say all of them are like that. That all of these people that did all of this, the worst crime against humanity was committed here against against my ancestors. That's the worst crime that's ever been committed. And there was no one paid for it. Nobody's paying for that. Right? But now what you're going to say is this. Now when you talk about victimology and you talk about the fact that you have this victim, your client committed a crime, here's a victim, and they're going to suffer, and they have children, and they have you want sympathy and empathy, but you have no sympathy and empathy. Like you think that went away. Like now you're saying that if you think that way, then it basically means that you really have a criminal mind. Right? You have a criminal mind. There's no question about that. And they don't understand that. And that's what makes it real. That's the reason why progression in this country is slow. It's because we have a large number of individuals that have the same temperament, the same trauma, psychosis, and devil evilness that they had centuries ago. They're the same individuals. What makes you think that these are different people? We say it all the time, and this is what's crazy about this country, is that we're always a country that's always saying, forget. You need to forget. That happened before. That doesn't happen now. It's before. But we have monuments all over the daggone place.
Yep.
Like, what does it, on 9/11, what does it say? We will never forget. Why? It happened.
Correct.
Those people are dead. Right? I'm talking about the people who perpetrated the crime. They're dead. They committed suicide, I guess. Right? But you'll do that annually. So everybody is able to grieve and manifest their pain and, remember and heal. But we can't do that.
Wow.
Because we're supposed to forget.
Correct.
We're not supposed to remember any of that. And every time you go in and you see the American criminal justice system and American prison system is very much a microcosm of our early time. I'm going to go through this one too. It's a microcosm of basically what we went through from the very beginning as black people in America.
Correct.
Right? And these people, and this is the thing, is they have no reason to even think that. It's like listen, I'm saying this wholeheartedly with everything in me. Based upon, I've been around some time now. I'm not a spring chicken. And I come from I come from a background where, I think I'm a very objective person. And most of these individuals are in no moral or ethical position to judge anyone. You see what I'm saying? And when you talk about, they're trying to garner your respect, but, I mean, you haven't earned that respect. Just because someone gave you a robe does not mean you're a good person. Just because someone hired you to be a district attorney don't mean you're a good person. It doesn't mean you're moral. You could have been a slave owner with the same mentality. You're no different than these individuals. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, were you going to say something?
Yeah. When you came back to when you said earlier, you don't know whether people do it. Do they do it consciously or unconsciously? Do they understand what they're doing, or is it just embedded in them to do as they do?
I mean, and that's the question. I think that sometimes, who, is it in you? It's not in my DNA to enslave somebody. It's not in my DNA to be unfair to someone. It's not in my DNA to treat someone wrong or bad for any reason. For example, there is not one person, white, black, green, brown, purple, that could cause me to do something to them unless they did something to me personally. It's not even in me.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Could I take a person and hang them from a tree and watch it while I'm eating on an apple and say, hey, and bring my kids to look at it?
Yeah.
Who would do that? That's a monster.
That's a monster. You're correct.
Could I actually? I'm an employer. I employ people. I would never mistreat someone because of the color of their skin and say, I'm going to do this to you because you look this way. I'm going to do this to you because I'm going to look this way. I'm going to do this to you. I'm going to mistreat you. I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to be fair. I'm going to destroy your life and your livelihood and treat you wrong and different because of the way you look. Right? Mm-hmm. Who does that? It's not in my DNA. I can't even do that. So, I think I'm a very strong person. I mean, I was a Marine. I was an infantryman. I'm a train killer. Right? Mm-hmm. But I couldn't do that to someone who is innocent, who hasn't done anything to me. And even when people do things to me, I still treat them fairly.
Yeah.
There's people that have done god-awful things to me. Just god-awful things to me. But I'm not going to go out of my way to destroy them, destroy their lives, to destroy their family, to destroy their children for no reason. Because they can't go beyond that.
Yeah.
See, all they know is they read a police report. The police report said a witness says they did X, Y, and Z. So now I'm going to play with your life. Because the witness said this happened. Well, witnesses lie every day.
Yeah.
There's people that go to people lie every day. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're in a Me Too movement. We see people lying about being, sexually assaulted. That may not be true. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You don't know that because you're being accused of something. And you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. Right? Mm-hmm. But the DA doesn't see it that way. They see it the reverse way. But they have the power to prevent you from having a fair hearing and a fair, because this is what they do. This is what makes it unfair. You're going to overcharge me. There's no question about it. Let's just say someone is charged with something that may give them 50 years. Mm-hmm. Based primarily on what someone said to them. You go and make a false police report or lie on a police report. So now this person is going to sit in prison where they might be good for half of it or a quarter of it. Mm-hmm. But you're going to hold that over the head so you can get as much prison time as you possibly can. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, what's the difference between someone out on the street that's going to do something that's going to impact that person's life and that person's family's life. Because everybody, let's just be real, everybody makes mistakes, and most
Correct.
people are a drive home away from going to jail themselves.
Correct.
Right? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, these people aren't perfect people. If you make the wrong person mad, you can almost put anybody in jail or make them get in trouble for anything. You can fabricate. Let's just they do it all the time. Let's just look at the COINTELPRO. We know the government has the ability to destroy people's lives whenever they want to. All you have to do is just say, well, okay, well, I'm going to go after you for this, or I'm going to go after you for that, because people make mistakes every day.
Yeah.
And so the problem is that, what's unfair is that as black people, we can't make mistakes. That's what they're telling us. Right?
We're not allowed to.
We're not going to make we can't make mistakes. Are you going to tell me that black people, are more, commit more physical harm to people than anyone else? No, that's not true. Can you say that black people smoke more weed and smoke or engage in drug use than anyone else? No, that's impossible. But why are the numbers so skewed when it comes to punishment? You see what I'm saying? And so that's where we are. We are in a position, and we're in a place as black folks where we can't make mistakes. You see what I'm saying? Like let me. I mean, the best example is the president of the United States. No black person could be like Trump and be the president of the United States. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Correct.
Let's see. What if Barack Obama could not have said anything near what Trump said
exactly,
and be the president.
Correct.
He had to be dadgum near perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? His pedigree is way above Trump's.
Yeah.
You got a guy that never got in trouble. He's a self-made person. He goes to the top schools. He makes the top grades. He does what he's supposed to, and he becomes the president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got a guy who basically morally, here we talk about the morality of it. You got Barack Obama that married Michelle. He's been married. He stayed married, and apparently is a good family man, a good father, the whole nine. Then you got a guy that's been married 4 or 5 times. I'm not trying to dish on people that's been married 4 or 5 times, but what I'm trying to do is make a point when it comes to, because what I'm saying is that Barack Obama couldn't have been married 4 or 5 times.
No.
If he would have been married if he would have been married 4 or 5 times and had children from someone else, he would not have gotten past the primary. You see what I'm saying?
No.
So that's just real talk. And so the point is, how do we look at it? We don't look at it from the perspective that black people are inferior. We don't look at it from the perspective that black people can't do certain things. We have to look at it from the perspective that we are living with a society that is morally bankrupt. That's really what it boils down to. If you're as a black person that's doing everything that you're supposed to do, you still can't say, well, I'm not worried about the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
Because you may be targeted not because of a mistake, but solely because you have people that are morally unable to appreciate humanity.
Yeah. And even if you want to know, even if you know exactly what the enemy look like and you try to do everything to conform to it, you're not going to get past it, because there's always that enemy laying in wait, because they come from a different breed. I mean, like, I know for me personally, I know that if I did something to someone, let's say hypothetically I did something to someone wrong, right? I will lay at night and I will think about that. Well, you have some people that don't even think. They can do something to a person. They can go sleep comfortably in a place, wake up the next morning and do it all over again. And these are the type of people that we're talking about.
A lot
right
of
now.
people.
A lot of people that does that, does exactly that. You know, they don't look at it as I'm seeing someone's child on this witness stand that is fighting for their life, and that could be my child.
Yeah, and the fact that it may not, and this is the thing, is that generally, I would go on a limb and I would say that most of the time, they're half truths when it comes to trying to figure out, you know, sometimes it's an element of way where they're trying to get the maximum for them. So in other words, it could have just been a situation where the person got into a fight they shouldn't have been fighting, so we're going to, you know, but it could have, but generally the victim in some cases are actually just as culpable, or the person who is accused is less culpable. You see what I'm saying? So when you're dealing with someone who is being charged with something, it's like, well, okay, they deal with numbers like people deal with contracts. Like, okay, why can't he get 2 years? And then they say, well, no, we have to give him 3 years because we have to get something for letting this go.
Wow.
I'm like, am I really talking about a human being?
Yeah.
And then when you talk about the issue about sometimes when you're talking about these alleged victims, I mean, you know, I'm all about that. Nobody wants to be a victim, but
Dedicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali to tackle the most pressing issues. Host attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning trial lawyer who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com.
You're on board KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 AM. The station